and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the numbers of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Harwich Council on Aging Board of Directors is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. I want everyone to be aware this video is being recorded and will be available on Harwich Channel 18 through YouTube. Are there any other questions before we get started with our meeting? Hearing none, we will move forward. And again, the meeting will be run as we run most of our meetings. We will be still having motions. We will need to get a motion made and a second. We are an official meeting at this time. So my first order of business will be to ask for an approval of the minutes of the March 4th, 2020 Council on Aging Board of Directors meeting.
So moved.
It's been moved by Carol. Joanne has seconded the motion, and I'm very fortunate, so you can see, Joanne is sitting with me in the office, so we're both here together, and she's my official seconder today, so I'll try to push it so you can see both of us. We've had a motion made and duly seconded. Any discussion, alterations, or changes to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, I will call for a vote. All in favor, please audibly say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And aye.
Richard, I apologize. I think it actually has to be a roll call vote.
Okay.
Not just an audible vote.
We'll go back to a roll call. Cal Thayer?
Yes.
Joanne Lepore?
Yes.
Ralph Smith?
Yes.
Angelina Chalaka?
Yes.
And Richard Waystack is an aye. Thank you. Caleb, my laptop is sitting away from me, so I can't see the chat. Is there anyone on the call who wishes to have public comment this morning? Emily, you're closer to your laptop or your computer. Would you check to see? Can't hear you.
We don't have anyone else on.
Okay, we will move forward. To my comments, and Emily and I chatted a month ago, 3 weeks ago, and we noted how important it was to check in with everybody on our committee. And this has been a year. You know, this has been a year, and I use the analogy, my wife and I travel every summer, and we were not able to get away this year to the Caribbean like we normally do. So we snuck away to the western part of the state for just a couple nights. Checked into a hotel, no great social distancing, no contact, no housekeeping. We checked in, got our keys, and that was it. We had an opportunity to hike a mountain, and we hiked Monument Mountain in Lee, Massachusetts. And my wife and I walk every day. We're in pretty good shape. And she really wanted to do this hike and said, it's a pretty easy hike, so not a problem. It's, take us a couple of hours. So we started. It was a wide path, easy walk, more of a trail walk. But then very quickly, it got very steep and very rocky. And I found myself slowing down and huffing and puffing a little bit. And said, boy, I thought I was in better shape this. And we started climbing and actually climbing some of the rocks on this trail. And at this point, my wife started apologizing, saying, well, I didn't realize it was quite this kind of hike. We got to a point, and I, at this point, need to tell you, I've got an irrational fear of heights. But nonetheless, I have a fear of heights. And we took this trail, what was going to lead us to Devil's Pulpit. And Devil's Pulpit was a high cliff, and my heart was beating quite heavily. My chest was tightening, and I was a little short of breath as we got closer to the top and closer to the edge. And she was really apologizing now. And we got to Devil's Pulpit, and there was a young man, great shape, obviously a hiker. And he looks and says, dude, how you doing? And I said to him, I said, well, I'm trying to overcome my irrational fear of heights. And he looked at me and he said, dude, you gotta always be growing. So we went out, had a picture taken near the edge of the cliff. Again, heavy breathing, heart pounding, and realized could overcome some of that fear. Climbing down, things eased up. The trail got a little bit wider. We ended up hiking for 2 hours. And by the time we were walking at the end, I think, oh, this was great. This was nothing. We can do this. And all I could think of was what's happened this year. You know, in March, when things went a little bit crazy with COVID, you know, we didn't know what was happening. Things were changing on a daily basis. They closed the town down. They closed down the community center. And yet, the Council on Aging, one of the most important organizations of this town, had to continue. And it was like that irrational fear of heights of what's going on. We didn't have some of the needs. Some of our volunteers couldn't get into town, into the community center. We lost some of the folks who were helping us out. Yet, Emily and her staff had to continue to provide the services to our community that were needed more than ever. So many of our people were confused at home, didn't know what was going on, what could they do, what could they not do? Could they go to the grocery store, could they not get to the grocery store? Transportation was still an issue. Yet Emily and her team worked diligently to see that services were available. And, you know, as things happened, we lost our social service coordinator, you know, and she hung in for a bit, but there were changes that had to be made. And during this time, there was a hiring freeze on. And the town was not hiring new positions, yet Emily had the opportunity to state her case to the selectmen and to the interim town administrator. And Emily got the position outside of the hiring freeze to be able to replace the social service coordinator, because we all know how important it is, the work that we're doing. So Emily will talk a little bit later about the staffing and what was accomplished. But you know, this year has been a challenge for us all. And, you know, wearing masks, socially distancing is still going on. We don't know what's going to happen this fall. School's open. And actually, my wife as a teacher is already back to school. The kids come back in a couple of weeks. We don't know what's going to happen next week. But we take it step at a time. Like taking that trail, you know, sometimes a little scary. Sometimes we have some of those fears, whether irrational or not, but we keep moving forward one step at a time. So I want to commend just the exceptional work that Emily and her staff have done during this very, very difficult time. For all of you members of the committee I keep seeing the emails, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And today we need to check in with each other, check in with Emily, see what's going on, see what we can do as members of this organization to assist her in the work that she's doing. So thank you all for being here. Not the easiest way to meet, but we're all getting pretty used to these Zoom meetings and these go-to meetings. So Emily, thank you for all that you've done, and we'll turn the meeting over to you for your report.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, everyone. I'm thrilled, really, to be here with you all. I know it's a different format than we'd like and than we're used to, but it's still nice to see your faces and hear your voices and to be able to connect and kind of catch up on. It's really been about 6 months now. It was funny reviewing the meeting minutes from the March meeting, and it was, oh, this COVID thing is coming up, and what are we doing? And I had mentioned having a meeting with Megan Eldridge, the health director, and Sue, the town nurse, and that's kind of where things stood. And then here we are, I think 2 weeks after that, the town was shut down, and we've kind of totally overhauled things in the 6 months that followed. So I did want to start just kind of giving you an overview of what we've been, how things have changed, what we've prioritized, and how we've continued to provide services for the last month, to give you a sense of where we're going in the short term and the long term, because we do expect this virus to be with us for the foreseeable future and to be impacting heavily upon our normal operations. And just kind of, give you the update. So I'll jump right in. I did try to give you pretty extensive packet materials, knowing that we wouldn't all be together and I couldn't hand out additional materials in person. So the first thing I think in your packet is an overview of operations for what we have been doing thus far for the last 6 months. So really it's been a prioritization of services that meet core needs. So we've scaled down the fun and exciting things to really make sure people are getting food and groceries and meals, transportation to essential medical services, really just those core needs. So in a day, we transitioned from our on-site lunches and breakfast and dinner programs to a community distribution program. And this was really, I think March 17th was St. Patrick's Day, and we still had an on-site St. Patrick's Day celebration. And the next day we were delivering meals into the community. We started with a capacity of about 35 or 40. Linda St. Pierre, the town chef, has worked diligently, creatively, passionately, brilliantly, really, to put this system in place. It's only cold meals. They have to be stable enough to be in a cooler and delivered for a few hours. So she's limited in what she can prepare, but everything is still nutritionally balanced, delicious, safe, creative. She's mixing up the menu even though she has fewer options. So that capacity started at about 35 or 40. We reached it pretty quickly, and it has expanded up to 70. So she is putting out 70 meals a day. So 350 meals per week we are getting to seniors in the community. We do that. The delivery is done by a group of volunteers. These folks come in every day. Ralph is one of them, so a shout out to Ralph as he's on here, but just a really dedicated group of folks picking up the meals here, going out on a delivery route, and getting them to folks at home. We have had to put pretty strict no contact drop-off mechanisms in place. Folks do have to be home to receive the meal. We can't leave a meal unattended. So those are some of the kind of just daily obstacles of getting those meals out to folks. And we have put pretty rigorous qualification criteria in place. We want to make sure that the meals, because we do have an upper limit to our capacity, are going to the folks most in need. So we did put that policy in place. So we're not trying to duplicate other meal delivery services, or if folks have other access to meal sources, they tend not to be on our list. It's really the folks who need that meal or a staff check-in or volunteer check-in who are getting them. So we are up to 70. This is a difficult area moving forward. Up until this time, the food costs have been a FEMA reimbursable expense. We anticipate FEMA reimbursement to end on September 30th. I do, of course, budget for meals in our regular annual budgeting process, but not for nearly this quantity. I'll get to that a little bit later when I talk about budget revisions, but I have requested supplemental funding to absorb the cost of the increased capacity, which will be subject to a town meeting vote in just a few weeks. So that's where our lunch program is. I don't know if anyone has any questions on that, or if you just kind of want me to run through everything and then check in after the fact. I don't know if anyone has a preference.
Emily,
Are we doing Saturdays and Sundays?
We are not doing Saturdays. It's just Monday through Friday. So no holidays, no Saturdays and Sundays. And we will, just to give everyone a heads up, we will be not doing meals for election day and the day preceding election day, because Linda does provide catering for election workers. The presidential election will obviously be a large scale, about 60 election workers, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So just to give the board the heads up and the public the heads up that we will be canceling lunch those 2 days to accommodate that very important election and to support the other departments and staff in town. But otherwise, yes, Monday through Friday.
And Emily, the folks who get their meals, they will be informed ahead of time that they will not be receiving for those 2 days.
We've already informed them, in fact, yes, to give them, yes, a few months heads up.
Okay, why don't you run through your report and we can hold questions. You've got a lengthy report and there's a lot to get to. So.
Okay, so for transportation, we have continued transportation throughout the full course of the pandemic. We, as you know, have 2 vans, an 8-passenger and a 12-passenger. We went, I think, from obviously a maximum of 12 capacity down to 4, then 2, then 1. So for many, many months, we were only able to transport 1 person at a time, either to grocery stores, pharmacies, essential medical appointments. Really, those are the places that we were going. We're back up to 2 passengers. As long as they are using the 12-passenger van, they are maintaining 6 feet of distance. Everyone is wearing a mask. Everyone is asked kind of the standard screening questions when they schedule their ride. And the van is fully disinfected by our van drivers between each trip. So if you go to Shaw's in the morning, they're disinfecting before you go to Stop and Shop in the afternoon. So it's really a much more rigorous cleaning process and a significantly reduced capacity. So we're trying to fit in more rides. We have expanded the locations that we're going to on the COA van because so many other transportation options have been taken offline. And of course, that's on top of already extensive transportation difficulties facing seniors all the time. So we did stop our volunteer medical driver program. We didn't want to put risk on volunteer drivers, and we're also mindful of the fact that you can't maintain 6 feet social distancing inside a standard vehicle. So we have taken that program offline. We did that immediately and kind of for the foreseeable future, and we're trying to absorb those most essential medical appointments still within the Hyannis to Wellfleet range onto the van. Again, a lot of folks are able to meet doing the telehealth or to reschedule appointments that aren't essential, but for those ones that are critical and have to be done in person, we are doing our very best to accommodate on our van. We've also included trips to the post office and local bank. The Friends bus is offline, and those are essential services. So to the extent possible, we are trying to schedule those trips in addition to our normal grocery store pharmacy route. So it's transportation has sort of expanded and contracted simultaneously in different ways, but we are doing our best to meet that very critical need. Other ways that we're supporting people with grocery and pharmacy support, we've partnered with immense gratitude with the Family Pantry. They now allow us to place orders. We email them the orders from here for people, and then the van is able to pick them up. The Family Pantry is doing all the bagging themselves with staff and volunteers so that we aren't going into the pantry to do that. So they have those bags ready for us, and then we drop those off no contact as well. We're also, of course, transporting people to grocery stores and pharmacies on the van, and we have had volunteers and staff do occasional grocery shopping or pharmacy pickup for people and dropping it off if they aren't comfortable or able to go on the van to the store themselves. There are restrictions on that, but we are trying to accommodate that kind of to the full extent possible. So I'd say those are our most core services. They take up the significant portion of our day-to-day. Some of the other things that we're doing, we created a social support phone program. It's kind of a phone tree where folks could call and volunteer to either make calls to others or to indicate that they wanted to receive calls. Just as, so this isn't, a professional check-in, it's not a staff wellness call, it's really just a social support, building relationships and connections, that type of thing. It has sort of died off a little bit, and it kind of segues into the next bullet point I have here, the Academic Public Health Volunteer Corps. This is a group of master's and doctoral students in public health at the 9 Massachusetts colleges and universities that have advanced public health programs. And they've had training through the Department of Public Health in senior wellness calls, amongst other things. And so we began partnering with them, I believe, in May to do senior wellness calls. And it's only for folks who opt in. So we did a lot of outreach through our newsletter, through the town website, through robocalls using My Senior Center, emails to our email distribution lists. It was covered in the Chronicle. I did a Channel 18 update to try and get folks to opt in because they were asking really great questions to try and assess needs of seniors in the community, and then passing that feedback on to us so that we can meet those needs directly and then just also better communicate what services are available. So we're continuing that partnership. We did not have a lot of interest. Probably about 25 people opted in despite kind of that extensive outreach. But I just spoke with the team lead last Friday, and they are looking to expand too. They want to make sure they're reaching the greatest number of people here in Harwich as possible. So they're going to absorb some of the social phone calls. So for folks who maybe don't need a wellness call, they don't have unmet needs, but they're still looking for that socialization, we're kind of going to lump those two things together. So our internal departmental social support phone call program is not up and running to the full extent, but it's going to be absorbed into the Public Health Volunteer Corps program. So we're excited about that, and hopefully folks will be interested in taking advantage of that opportunity. In terms of programming, obviously we are not having any on-site programming. We ended on-site programming back in March, but we have been trying to find creative ways to bring programming to folks at home. We did an indoor vegetable gardening project where we gave people kind of all the supplies they needed, grow bags, soil, seeds, growing instructions, the full gamut of things that they could do right on a dining room table or right in their window. They don't need access to garden space or the ability to do that very physically strenuous activity. So we gave out about 60 of those. We are all out. It was a very successful program. People have been sending in their pictures and reports of the veggies they were able to grow and enjoy. So we did that program. We've distributed exercise equipment that people can use at home, either in conjunction with future remote programming that we offer through the COA or through things they find either on the internet or TV, other fitness program opportunities. So they have the equipment to follow along. So we've distributed those kits. We have activity and wellness kits that just have, books and goodies for people to stay kind of entertained and engaged from home also. So we've done those kind of at-home kits, and then we're really working now and in the coming weeks to put on some remote programming. So how do we bring back our classes and instructors to do a program in this format? So something through Zoom or potentially through Channel 18 where they can access and participate that way. There's certainly a technological barrier there where people either maybe don't have access to internet or the laptop or tablet or smartphone to use it, or maybe they have those things but aren't familiar with these types of platforms. So we're trying to figure out how to cross that barrier and then to put the programs in place. The other factors there are how do we process payment and what kind of liability do we incur if we're providing programming offsite. So those are kind of the three hurdles we're working towards to fully implement that type of programming, but that's really our next big push. And then lastly, we did do, we purchased masks, washable, reusable masks in bulk, and we've been distributing those to seniors or family and caregivers of seniors. So that's kind of where we've been, and we're slowly beginning to resume on-site one-to-one programming. So either appointments with staff, especially with myself, the town nurse or the social services coordinator, and then we're bringing in the one-to-one professionals like the elder law attorneys, podiatry care, the mobile dental hygiene clinic. We had some tax appointments with the AARP tax aides right before the tax filing deadline. So those, again, one-to-one services, but no small group on-site programming yet. So that's kind of where we have been. So we have been open to the public on that limited appointment-based only since July 1st. We are really trying to minimize contact and entry into the building. So if folks can handle whatever they need us to help them with by phone or by email, we are trying our utmost to do that just to minimize risk for everyone, the public and staff. But we are seeing folks on that limited basis. So that's where we've been. That's kind of where we are to date. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts, questions, or feedback on that. I would be delighted to hear them.
Well done. Emily, I think it's absolutely incredible what you've been doing. Really. I'm awed. Really. You've done an incredible job.
Emily, do you have enough volunteers?
We do. I think we're starting to slowly look at bringing more volunteers into the office to help with phone calls and reception, especially as we do have more of these one-to-one appointments. Our phones are ringing off the hook. It's really, and Julie, though she has been promoted to the position of social services coordinator, we obviously haven't backfilled behind her and we can't negate the day-to-day. So unfortunately, her job doesn't look a lot different yet. And she's the only one answering the phone. So we're not getting to every call. We're certainly doing our best to return every call within 24 hours, but the call volume is very extensive. So we're hoping to get some folks in to even just help with call triaging. So that's going to be our next volunteer push, I think. But we're doing really well in terms of the volunteers helping with the lunch distribution, grocery, family pantry, kit distribution, those types of things. We have just really phenomenal volunteer support.
Emily, do you have any kind of a format or any kind of a program set up for training volunteers? I know I've talked to a lot of people who would love to do something. They just don't know what is required and what their skill set needs to be. So maybe a little seminar on how to be a volunteer would help.
I think that's a phenomenal idea. I've talked to Julie kind of on a really preliminary basis of how do we put something like that together, because it looks different to be a volunteer now than it did, 7 months ago. So I think we are definitely working towards that. And if you had any particular feedback, I would be happy to incorporate it. And I'll certainly send, draft plans out to you all to keep you apprised and for your feedback also, because definitely it's different. We're getting more difficult situations coming in by phone for sure that require that professional follow-up. So that's the other barrier, is how do we make sure volunteers feel comfortable answering the phones and getting the calls to the right staff member kind of at the right priority. So that's definitely absolutely.
I think a workshop, on that would certainly be helpful. People say, well, I'd love to go in and volunteer a few hours a week. But what do I need to be able to do? And I think that would be helpful. I think we might get some feedback on that.
Emily,
I appreciate that.
You and Julie may be able to do a Channel 18 segment on volunteering that then can be taped and made available on YouTube as a recording. And I know Ralph is a rabid YouTube fan, so but it would allow people who didn't see the Channel 18 to have it available, and we can always send out a link to that segment on Channel 18 to people, as Carol said, who may be interested. That would be a great way to do that.
Is that Institute you're talking about? Institute?
I'm sorry, Ralph, I didn't hear you.
I say, is that Institute that you're talking about?
That's Institute, yes, Institute.
That's it, yes.
Okay.
That's like TwitFace.
Oh.
Anybody else have any feedback for Emily? Obviously, we know what a tremendous job she has been doing. We've been so blessed to have her, and we're just so fortunate to have her come in as our director. If nobody has anything else, do you want to do an update on staffing? You mentioned Julie, and still basically working 2 roles at the moment.
Sure. So I want to say I so appreciate your support and your positive feedback to the work that I've been doing and that we've been doing. I have the best team of people working here with me. Everyone has taken on new roles, has learned new skills, has found creative and innovative ways to perform their essential functions and to best serve our community. I can't express my gratitude to them, to work with and for them. They're the best. And so kind of speaking to that, Julie Weedis, who we hired September 2019 as our program specialist 1, was just recently promoted to the social services coordinator position. So Susanna Keith let me know in March that she was leaving, and April 24th was her last day. We were subject to the townwide hiring freeze that was implemented pre-COVID. We certainly did our best as a department to absorb the impact of her loss, but it was an extensive impact on the services we were able to provide to seniors. There's those higher level professional functions that require someone in that position to respond to those needs effectively that we didn't have the means to do. So I was able to go before the Board of Selectmen at their July 6th meeting. I included kind of all of the information that I presented to them in your packet for reference. So I think the next couple pages, there's my recommendation for the appointment of Julie to the position, her offer letter, and then the following pages were my memoranda on why it was essential to fill the position despite the hiring freeze. You'll notice that I put together some materials on kind of what the core functions of a social services coordinator are, kind of broadly defined in terms of outreach, community-based services, advocacy, direct support, responding to critical needs, information and referral, and education. The highlighted areas are things that we are not able to do without a full-time social services coordinator. And truthfully, the areas not highlighted are things that we have done our best to absorb, but at a cost to the functions of other positions. So I was very grateful to the selectmen. They unanimously voted in favor of filling the position despite the hiring freeze. Julie did apply as an internal candidate. She is a wonderful fit for the role. She does come with a background in a master's in public health and social work, extensive experience working with both seniors and other at-risk populations, and has been the best fit for us at the COA for the last year. So I am thrilled that she was interested in this promotion, and I know she will be a great fit for this position. August 24th, last Monday, was her first official day in this role. Again, that doesn't look a lot different yet for her. She's still situated at the front desk and still largely managing just the day-to-day functions, because we can't do without those functions, unfortunately. So that leaves a program specialist 1 position vacant, And as you'll see on the agenda, technically our van driver position has been formally vacant since September 4th of last year. Our temporary hire in John Chatham, he's been driving for us on that temporary hire basis since October of 2019. He continues to be a wonderful fit for the department. This position vacancy did predate the hiring freeze, and so we were able to move forward in the hiring process. And I think we were completing final interviews the week COVID hit. So it's been sort of on hold for COVID reasons, not hiring freeze reasons, but it is still technically vacant. I did want to make sure you were aware of that. I have a meeting with the interim town administrator, Joseph Powers, on Wednesday, the 16th, to discuss next steps for hiring. So I'm hopeful to see some forward movement on both of those positions. I don't know to what extent we'll need an additional exemption for the hiring freeze to fill the program specialist one position, or whether, and I'm hopeful for this, it's kind of considered a part B of the exemption already granted to the social services coordinator position. I imagine if the board could see the importance of getting those key social services coordinator job functions done, and if we still can't do them in light of the promotion, that hopefully they will see the advantage of moving forward filling that position as well. They are all budgeted for, they're not new positions. The program specialist one position is the one that is primarily grant funded. It is 27 hours a week grant funded and 8 hours per week town funded, although the benefits are also paid by the town. So that will be September 16th. I will certainly update you on the outcome of that meeting at our next meeting. So I'm hopeful we'll get to move forward productively in filling those positions.
Just want to let the board know as well, when that was going before the Board of Selectmen, two of the selectmen had actually reached out and asked, is the need there for those positions? And obviously, I lobbied to say it was, and I think it's an opportunity for us to continue to lobby. I wanted to mention that the interim town administrator, when he spoke at the selectmen's meeting, was effusive in his praise of both Emily and Julie for that position. And at times it takes a couple phone calls, you know, so if you're comfortable with any of the selectmen, it'd be a good opportunity for you to reach out, say hello, see how they're doing through COVID, and let them know the great work that's being done up on the Council on Aging and the importance of these positions for us. So never hurts to lobby, and but I respect the board for their recognition of the work, not only that Emily's doing, but her entire staff up at the Council on Aging. Thanks, Emily. Moving forward.
Yes. So as folks know, we are, our annual town meeting for May was rescheduled, is now scheduled for September 26th. It'll be at the high school, Monomoy Regional High School, outside at Stadium Field. But because it was not held in May, the town didn't pass the fiscal year 21 town operating budget in May. The town has adopted a 1/12 budget mechanism that was approved by special legislation at the state level. So as we were gearing up for this now September town meeting, department heads were asked by the town administrator and finance director to submit revised budgets. Knowing that the town was already facing a significant budget shortfall pre-COVID, and knowing that COVID was certainly going to exacerbate that with increased costs and reduced revenue. So department heads were asked to make additional cuts. I may be perhaps in the minority that I requested supplemental funding. I did identify pretty extensive cuts, but overall asked for additional funding, and that's largely to support this lunch program. So you'll see the memo I sent to Joe, the town administrator, and Carol, our finance director. I've requested about $10,000 additional dollars for fiscal year 21 to support this lunch program. As I mentioned before, 70 people every day are relying on this meal, often as their only nutritionally balanced meal, and sometimes as their only meal, period. We don't want this program to go away when it is no longer FEMA reimbursable. So this is probably the most essential service we are providing right now. And again, 350 meals per week, there are people relying on this service. So because it's been FEMA reimbursable through September 30th, we haven't been paying what we initially budgeted for. So that ultimately the difference between the total we initially budgeted for, in anticipation of a May town meeting and what I'm requesting for September is that $10,000. When I submitted this budget revision, our capacity was at 60 meals per day. It's been bumped up in the last month to an additional 10 meals per day. So you'll see in this memo that that $10,000 would bump us back up to 60, not 70 meals per day. I do think we could absorb those 10 meals per day with folks who could find alternate meal sources as we kind of gear up more extensively as a society and more resources are open and available to people. But I would say conservatively that those 60 people are heavily reliant on us for that food source. So I know that the revised budget that's been presented to the selectmen and to the finance committee has included these figures. It doesn't appear that they have made cuts to that. So I think the next hurdle will be town meeting field, I suppose, on September 26th. And I'm hopeful it will have the community support. You'll notice the other request I made, an additional request for 5 hours per week in van driver coverage. And that's really to absorb the medical rides. So because we can only bring 2 people on a van at one time, and we're already making additional trips, our transportation services are maxed out. Because we have 2 vehicles, I could have 2 vans and 2 van drivers on the road at once. And so that 5 hours per week would give us just a little bit of wiggle room to get people to those essential medical appointments. I requested funding for an additional phone. That's kind of the lower level request that could be cut, but I did request it for remote work purposes. And then one cost that was not at all related to COVID is our copier maintenance and service. As you know, it is shared by the COA, cemetery, and veterans. And we got hit with about $1,000 overage. We were expecting in the $300 to $400 overage, and we got hit with $1,000 overage. So I just need that to meet my copying contract. You can then see the offsets I identified, and these are really only due to the change in our operation. So these are not offsets we could permanently absorb as a department without a significant detrimental effect on seniors in this community, but because our operations are so different right now, we can absorb these temporarily. The biggest change is that reduction to our professional tech services line item, which is the subsidy we provide to Harwich seniors attending the Orleans Adult Day Health Program. This is for folks with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia who go to the day program and their caregivers have that respite period. Their program is on hold at least through December. So I cut that line item in half essentially because we are not subsidizing people until January at the earliest because they've had to shut down due to COVID. And then you'll see kind of in the form of purchase services and advertising, we're obviously not doing the same programming. We're not paying vendors to come on site, so we can absorb a reduction in those costs. Computer networking, we were hoping to install the supplemental My Senior Center scan-in station to make sure we're accurately counting people who come into the building for programming. People aren't coming into the building for programming, so we can probably put that cost off until fiscal year 22 or until such a time that we have folks back in the building for programming. Same with travel. Myself, the town nurse and social services coordinator aren't going to folks' homes for home visits and safety inspections and those types of services. We're not traveling to meetings and trainings. Everything is remote or in office. The town nurse is still doing home visits, so I left a little bit more in terms of funding for travel for her. But we were able to make some cuts to that line. So you'll see that the total request, total supplemental requests I made was $17,176.14. And I identified $10,680 in offset. So the net increase is just at $6,500. And again, that does appear to be in the revised budget and hopefully will be supported on town meeting floor. So that's kind of where we are budget-wise, and then I included it in kind of spreadsheet form if you were interested in looking at the material that way. I don't know if anyone has any questions on that.
Yeah, we're going to let the budget fly. Again, let's not snatch defeat from the jaws of victory if things are flowing forward. And those of you who will be at town meeting, if we do have to support it, please do. But I think the budget will go pretty much as is, especially for what's been happening with seniors. I don't think we'll have a need. We will be prepared to support it if necessary, but I don't believe we will have to. Anybody else? Okay, moving forward.
All right. And then I think the last thing I wanted to touch on, as you know, we do receive an annual grant, the formula grant from the Executive Office of Elder Affairs. So that's budgeted in the state budget. I've included kind of the frequently asked questions relative to the formula grant. All of the directors and probably all 351 municipalities have been asking, do we anticipate a reduction? The answer is that we don't know. We've been told by the Mass Councils on Aging Executive Director to potentially anticipate up to a 25% reduction in our formula grant. So if you can see, I included for all towns, so if you flip to page 4 of that Executive Office of Elder Affairs spreadsheet, it shows our current year, fiscal year 20 allocation is based on $12 per senior, which is anyone age 60 plus. And that's based on the 2010 census data. So our fiscal year 21 award was $55,548. If that went down to $9 per senior, we would be down to $41,661. So we'd be losing $15,000 of funding. That grant funds primarily the 27 hours of the program specialist 1 position, as well as our newsletter printing costs. So I am worried about that. The way that the grant works is that we are allowed to deficit spend each year for purposes that were approved the prior year until the state gives us the allocation. I am being exceptionally conservative with how I spend that, even though I'm allowed to spend it more extensively. Truthfully, I'm only funding the program specialist 1 position and the newsletter. So none of the other services, programs, purchases that are authorized under the grant that I could be spending now, I'm not spending any of it. I'm just keeping it allocated for that, the 27 hours of that position and for the newsletter until I have more information on what the award will be. So I'll certainly keep you posted on that. I don't know if anyone has any questions on that. And the last thing, just that annual town meeting is outside, September 26th, which is a Saturday, 10 a.m. Social distancing, seating, mask requirements are all in place to make it a safe event for folks to attend in the community. I certainly will be there. I hope to see you there. And I think that concludes my report on kind of what's been happening and where we're going, unless folks have questions for me.
Thanks, Emily. And just a reminder, the selectmen voted Monday night to reduce the quorum from 150 to 100 people, but the interim town administrator has been told to plan for upwards of 500 people to be there. So if you're going to attend town meeting, I would strongly suggest that you get there early and get a seat and get up close. I think there'll be a good crowd there this year. And Emily, just exceptional job that you've been doing. You've had so much on your plate. You've done it with such grace and such efficiency. And the bottom line is that the needs of our seniors have continued to be met during this time. And I think I can speak for the entire council as they say that. We're just so fortunate to have you, and watching you during this time has been exceptional. We thank you for your service and that of your staff during this very, very difficult time.
Thank you. Thank you for all of your support.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thank you.
Absolutely awesome.
All righty, let's move on if we can. Obviously, a couple of things. Our volunteer recognition event has been postponed. Everything's postponed for the time being. We're not losing sight of it. We know how important volunteers are, especially at a time like this. We will get back to it. I would like to get back to a consistent schedule of meetings if we can. Back on until we can meet in person, this is the way we're going to be meeting. So I would like to go back to our original Wednesday meeting at 10 a.m. Does anyone have any objection? We need to continue to meet with quorums, but is there any objection to going back to meeting on a monthly basis?
No, none.
Great.
I'm fine.
Thank you. And Emily, we want to know what we can do, what we can do to assist you, internally, externally, because we just don't know. we don't know, is this going to end in a month? Is it going to be another year of this? And we all talk to different people. We all hear different scenarios of what's going to go on. But in reality, until a vaccine has been brought forward, has been found to be effective, and has been utilized extensively, we're going to continue to be dealing with some of these issues. So I know I'm hearing from council members, what can we do to assist you and to best use of your council at this time?
Thank you. And I just want to say I've so appreciated all of your support throughout. I know you've all reached out to me, and I've been so grateful to have you supporting, volunteering, helping in the background and the foreground. So thank you. I think a couple of things. Of course, the advocacy as we pursue filling positions, that's the hardest thing right now, is just is feeling like we're always playing catch up, taking longer than we'd like to respond to some of the needs of seniors in our community just because we're so inundated, and trying to find a way to do some of the bigger picture things instead of being so bogged down in the day-to-day. So I think being fully staffed would be hugely advantageous in ways that I can't put into words. Again, I'm very hopeful for the meeting I have with Joe on the 16th, but having folks here and able to do the professional staff work will make a huge difference for us. And then I think maybe if folks are interested in coming back into volunteer, I do see that office support as being the next big volunteer push. Would be really helpful if, again, folks are interested and comfortable. I don't want anyone to do anything that they aren't comfortable doing, and I don't want to pressure anyone to be on site in public if they don't want to be. So I'm very mindful of that and appreciative of the risk that there is inherent in coming in. So I think that would be kind of the next big volunteer push for us. And then the remote programming, I think I've been talking internally about wanting to build up our remote programming probably since June or July, and it's just a lot of staff work to get it going. And I think, again, that big hurdle of people becoming comfortable with the technology. And so that's probably going to be our first big push, is how do we do a Learn to Zoom training. Maybe we put together practice Zoom, where that's all that the program is practicing. How do you log in? How do you download that application on your phone or the software onto your laptop? And then how do you mute yourself and unmute yourself and turn your video on? And so obviously the folks on here have some comfort and familiarity with that, because I can see you all and hear you all. So if folks are interested in doing that from home, participating in those kind of Learn to Zoom and practice sessions, I think that would be huge also. So those are kind of the three areas I see our greatest need in, and certainly appreciate the support and time that goes into those areas. I think are the most immediate needs we have.
Emily, how many volunteers do you think you need immediately for?
So we're looking at having up to 2 volunteers in addition to Julie at a time. In the past normal operations, it was 1 volunteer and Julie, but really the call volume is so extensive that we could benefit from having 3 people answering the phones. So we could have up to 2 people per day, Monday through Friday, for morning and afternoon shifts to fill that role pretty immediately.
So you need 10 people pretty much immediately to get going.
Yes.
There's one right here next door to me who's willing to come back in.
Yeah, I'll help out anytime.
And she,
thank you.
And I think Carol had the great idea, if you can have Julie put together the criteria, what's necessary, and the COVID precautions necessary for a volunteer, and sort of fast track that, we can get it out of Channel 18. And then once it's on Channel 18, we can make it linkable to email out to people as a requirement for them to watch ahead of time, and we can get the word out. And I think we're going to have a network with our council that we can get that word out that we need these people. Who do you want us to forward people to if we have people interested?
That would be to Julie for right now, and I'll send around her email address, her direct email address, in case you don't have it as soon as this meeting ends.
And if you would just obviously clue her in that, we're planning on doing this, we'll start getting those names out. But but that's what we need to do. And that's what, if we can support, we will most certainly do so. I know Joanne will reach out to Julie and see when you need some help that she can get down there and assist. Angie has mentioned it. But we've got people who are looking, as Carol said, who are calling to see what we can do. So we'll most certainly help out in that area. Joanne, do you have any updates for us from Elder Services at this point?
They had one virtual meeting in June.
Can you guys hear Joanne okay? Go ahead, Joanne, you got the floor.
They had one virtual meeting in June that for me turned out to be an absolute disaster. There was no meeting in July or August, but if there's a meeting this month, I'm going to call them and ask her to come over personally to pick up the packet, and then I would have minutes from that meeting.
Okay.
Sorry it didn't work out, but it was a disaster.
Well, and I think, Emily, that's a great, obviously, area that we can assist. You know, Joanne's here today with me, and I'll make this available to her for her elder services if necessary. But if we can assist folks who are not as adept at GoToMeeting, Zoom, Blue Jeans, all these different video conferencing that's available, some of us are pretty comfortable with it. And if we can do anything to assist people in getting on, getting off, I know I'm happy to help. I'm happy to help Julie put a program together if you need for the basics. You know, put some screenshots together. How do you log on? How do you click on? Where do you go from there? How do you turn on your mic? How do you turn on your video? Most folks don't even know if their computer has a video. You know, so if we can assist in those areas, we'll be happy to do so. Joanne, thank you for your service. Let's go around if we can. Carol Thayer, anything new?
Nope, I'm good.
Good to see you. You look wonderful on screen. You're on our big screen here at the office, and you look wonderful.
Well, isn't that grand? Thank you so much.
Angelina,
No, everything so far is good. And again, I want to thank Emily and the crew. You did an outstanding job. And I see the little buses traveling all over town, so thank you.
Thanks, Angie. Ralph Smith?
Do I look wonderful? No, I have nothing.
Thanks, Ralph. I'm sorry coming in close because I need to see my screen. Is there anyone else who's on the call that I'm missing? I think we got all of it. Emily, any last words before we ask for an adjournment?
Just my extensive gratitude. Thank you. And it's wonderful to see you.
Great to see you, Emily.
Thank you, Emily. At this point,
Taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved and seconded by Joanne. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, so signify by saying aye. Joanne?
Aye.
Richard Waystack, aye. Carol Thayer?
Aye.
Angelina Chalaka?
Aye.
Ralph Smith?
Aye.
We are duly adjourned. Thank you so much for everyone being here. Emily,
This
great job.
conference is no longer being recorded.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aye.